folks, Doomed Wizard here. A lot of you seem to enjoy my video on hacking Basic Fantasy to create the Fantastic Four that I did a while back, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to do another video like it. This time around, I'll be creating the Uncanny X-Men. Sorry, couldn't help it. I'll be creating the original Uncanny X-Men for this video. I figured since I created the early iteration of the Fantastic Four, it'd be kind of fun to keep with the Silver Age theme. If you'd like to see how I would handle the more current versions of the X-Men, let me know in the comments. And let me know who your favorite X-Man is. Maybe I'll do a video specifically about them, where I can go more in depth into handling their powers. And just a heads up, I have something of a personal history with Wolverine and early D&D. Anyway, while I was creating these characters, I got to thinking about a few house rules you might want to implement when running a superhero campaign in the OSR. These are just ideas to help give the campaign more of a flavor of a comic book, as opposed to the grim and dark nature of fantasy games. One of the things I like to do with my games is give my players 3 points to put in their stats each time they level up, but they can't put more than 1 point in a specific stat at a time, and stats cap at 18. This way, it gives the feeling that their characters are growing in a natural way. In the case of the X-Men, at least in the early days, growth, training, and experience played heavily into the storylines. Something else to consider is earning experience points. In most OSR games, experience points are primarily gained through finding treasure. Destroying monsters is secondary, really. But in a superhero campaign, this seems kind of counterintuitive to being a hero. Villains and Vigilantes was my first exposure to superhero role-playing games, and they gave XP for apprehending bad guys. I've always liked that idea. I even gave half XP for just surviving an encounter with a villain who managed to elude capture. But using this method is still going to make level advancement a slow, painful crawl. That's why I recommend leaning heavily into awarding bonus XP for being, well, heroic. Years ago, I was playing in a Heroes Unlimited campaign. We discovered a mad scientist's underground lair and thwarted his plans, but not before he managed to hit the lair's self-destruct button. Why do they always have a self-destruct button? As we were hightailing it to safety, my character, Xenoman, was grabbing unconscious security guards on the way out. One of my fellow players asked me, "Why are you even bothering? They're just NPCs." "Because that's what heroes do," I told him. Next thing I know, my fellow heroes are grabbing bodies as they ran out the door. Whether we got any bonus XP for that or not, I don't remember, but it's exactly the kind of thing I give bonuses for. Rewarding good behavior is a great way to get everyone on the same page. The last thing I'd suggest considering is some form of death save. Now, normally I'm opposed to death save rolls, and don't get me started on 5e's arbitrary death save. There's literally nothing about it that's tied to the actual character. It's just kind of a deus ex machina. In comics, and especially in superhero movies, characters seem to somehow survive events that would kill any normal person. But superheroes aren't normal, nor should they be. So here's what I suggest. When a character hits 0 hit points or less, they're unconscious and otherwise incapacitated. On their next turn, on a d20, the player rolls a death save, trying to roll a 10 or better. If they do, they're still alive. Sounds too easy, right? Here's the catch. If the character has less than 0 hit points, deduct that negative modifier from the roll. In other words, a character who is at, say, -3 hit points would deduct 3 from their save. We can't make it too easy for them, right? Then there's no real risk. Also, no one bleeds out in comics. Oh, you may hear me mention difficulty challenges and target numbers throughout this video. If you're not familiar with those terms, I did a video on them a while back. Speaking of videos, if you like my videos, why not take a moment to do all the YouTube things? Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that little bell icon so you don't miss a single video. And now, without further ado, the Uncanny X-Men. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to do the characters in alphabetical order, which is kind of handy because it would end with Professor X, and I wanted to talk about how to possibly handle him due to just how powerful he is. So that means we start with Angel. Now, Angel's power obviously is his wings, so I just gave him wings with a movement rate of a griffin, and I also gave him a dex bonus when he's in flight to kind of show just how dynamic he is. One of the things you could do as he would advance in levels is possibly maybe increase that dex bonus, but if you didn't want to do that, you could just focus on increasing his dexterity in general. I'm also not going to delve into how I rolled up all the stats for him and hit points and stuff like that because you pretty much know how that's done. And that brings us to Beast. Now, Beast's power is his acrobatics. I guess they figured his oversized feet and hands gave him acrobatic abilities. So I gave him an acrobatic power where basically the GM could come up with a target number for him to be able to pull off a stunt, and the player would then roll a d20 plus a d4, and if he makes that target number or higher, he succeeds. You could have it where as he increases in levels, like every 3 or 4 levels, maybe that increases by a die type, like instead of a d4, maybe the next time be a d6 and so on. I gave him a jumping power. Now, I couldn't find anything really to use for a jumping power in Basic Fantasy, so I googled how far a great ape could jump, and it turns out to be about 30 feet, so I'll leave it at that. Now, he can climb walls like a thief, so I gave him first level climb walls ability that comes naturally to him. You could have that increase as he goes up in levels, just like a normal thief skill. I gave him the same genius ability that I gave Mr. Fantastic in the other video. For Cyclops' Optic Blast, I just used the magic missile stats, which is why as he goes up in levels, he'll be able to fire off more of them per round because he's getting better and more adept at using his powers. If you've been noticing uniforms acting as leather armor on these sheets, it's because their uniforms, like the Fantastic Fours, are made out of unstable molecules, so I thought since it's a tougher, more resilient material, that I would just give him the leather armor class like I did with the Fantastic Four. Iceman was the tricky one. Aside from his ice armor, which I gave him the same equivalent of an ice golem's armor, and his ice missiles, which act similarly to magic missile, but instead of energy, they're chunks of ice that he creates. His ice manipulation was the hardest thing to figure out, until I looked up the web spell and realized that a lot of the properties of the web spell could be used for ice. Some of these characters have power activation rules, and in the Fantastic Four video I kind of covered that. But with Iceman's ice manipulation, you could do something similar to like the genius power. You know, the GM assigns him a target number to create, say, a flight of stairs or an ice bridge, and if he makes that roll, then he creates his ice bridge or his ice stairs or whatever he wants to create. Marvel Girl is pretty straightforward. She would have telekinesis similar to the spell, and telepathy, which you could use the rules for ESP on. Which brings us to Professor X and how exactly to handle him as a character. Put simply, you don't. You use him as an NPC due to just how incredibly powerful he is. Think of him as the wizard that hires the party to retrieve a magic item, for instance, or go on a quest. Basically, the GM could come up with an adventure and have Professor X send him on the adventure and could keep in contact with him telepathically if they needed to. Things like that, for instance. You wouldn't want to put him in the game because he would off-balance everything, especially with these guys being at first level. Well, there you have it, the Uncanny X-Men. If you were the GM, what kind of adventures would you send them on? If you've got a cool idea, why not leave it in the comments? I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you'd like to see more like this, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.